Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cape Cod Moms, the Parent Pod. We bring you this episode every week on Thursday nights. We're a weekly virtual show brought to you featuring local family-friendly businesses, highlighting local parents, discussing important topics, connecting you to experts, spreading some kindness, and more. And so every week we bring you a fun new guest. This evening, our guest is Tracy Lamperti. She's been a guest with us before, an advisor with us right from the beginning. We had a little technical difficulties. We started before. We're back again. It looks like everything's working now. But tonight, we're going to be talking about intimacy. And I'm being joined by my very handsome husband, Brian. Everybody say hi. Give him a little like. He'll appreciate that. Because tonight's topic is going to be the 10 essential intimacy tips. And so if you saw our ad, children thrive when their parents thrive. And whether you're thriving or surviving, barely surviving, little bit of both, giving special care to these 10 essentials will benefit you. So, whether moms, grab your partner, grab your guy, sit down. I hope the kids are away, because we're going to have some fun tonight. So let's bring Tracy on now, and let's start having some fun. I'm excited, right, Brian?
Big time.
Big time. Hi, Tracy. We are definitely good. I can see everything going on this now. So
okay, good.
Just pretend that didn't happen.
Okay,
so,
restart.
Restart. It's the year 2020, right?
Yeah.
Why not? So for everybody who may not know you, can you just do your quick bio again for us?
Sure. So I'm Tracy Lamperti. I have a private practice in Brewster in the Lemon Tree Village. I'm doing a couple days of telehealth, a couple days of in-office meetings at this point. And so we're going to talk about, I've been in practice for about 25 years. I currently see primarily couples, but individuals as well. For those who are looking for therapy for their children, I don't see individual children now, but I do the family. I do a lot of family work and can support children that way. So I do a lot of couples work, and especially since it's so hard to get an appointment right now, I have a lot of resources on my website so that people can get started on sort of like a DIY couples therapy sessions at home if both people are willing. If they're willing to come into the office, they're definitely going to be willing to go on my website and get some of the resources off of there. And so that gives people a really good jump start to their couples therapy when they've already begun to work with some of the resources that I would help them with in sessions.
Awesome. And like I told everyone, you've been with us since the beginning, basically. We're coming up on 10 years. Can you believe that?
Yeah, congratulations. It's been great.
It's been fun, and I'm so proud that you have been with us for that long, giving advice to our moms. I mean, I've gotten so much advice over the past decade from you, and I can't say enough good things about what I've learned from you and what an important resource you are. So I'm really excited to discuss our topic tonight.
Great,
so we were just discussing as part of the ag, surviving, thriving, and we're a little bit of both, barely surviving. So can you get us thriving tonight?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenging time. What I've seen is I've seen a lot of couples who've really shored up and come together really well. And those who were even those who were already struggling, some of those couples, I've seen them really group up and come together and start to thrive when they weren't thriving a year ago before the pandemic. But then, there's some couples who were really desperately struggling before then and didn't change a whole bunch. So I have these resources, and the one I guess we're talking about tonight is the essential qualities for intimacy. So when we talk about intimacy, obviously we're talking about physical intimacy and emotional intimacy. The two kind of go like hand in glove. And they're both really important to pay attention to. And it's the maintenance, really. So it's the maintenance to do a little bit every day or a little bit a few times a week to pay attention to your relationship and make sure you're not losing track of your connection to each other. And the bitterness or frustration and things like that aren't setting in with some of the frustrations that are like crowding in around us.
So even in like the best of times, normally, I mean, it's work. A relationship is work, and like you said, you have to be able to work at it a little bit every day and nurture that and work through problems. And with the pandemic, it just makes everything amplified, right?
Yeah.
And so as a result, a lot of self-care or relationship self-care gets left last, especially if you have young children or any age children, because the schooling, the education, and continuing to work has become, it's survival right now. So how do we make time for that? Is it, scheduling a time? What happens when you're both exhausted? How do you work through those things?
Yeah, I'll tell you this story that I tell almost everyone. Well, first off, just to say, we say that if you're not working on your marriage, you're working on your divorce. It's not like you can just do nothing and expect it to keep thriving. It's like if you don't, repaint your trim on your house, like if you don't do the maintenance, things are going to start to fall apart. And it's the same with marriage. So here's my little story about what I learned. I was probably in my 20s. I was working for the Department of Social Services at the time, now Department of Children and Families, Families and Children. And I had a family that I worked with. It was a foster family, and they had I don't know, 4 of their own kids, and at any given time, probably 3 or 4 foster children. And I remember as this unmarried, not a mother, remember walking in there and being like, how can you possibly manage this? And I didn't even know the magnitude of it then because I wasn't even a parent. But they said to me, and both of them said, they were both there showing up for the time with me that I was there for important reasons. And they said every day, it was probably a warm month at the time, maybe it was the summer or something. And they had this patio out back, and they said every day we have our coffee out there together, and the kids know nobody interrupts us during that time. So the older kids take care of the younger kids, and it just it's our sacred time. And I didn't ask them at the time, well, what do you talk about? What do you spend the time? I'm sure they just enjoyed each other's company. They took that time to fuel themselves as adults and as a couple to get themselves good and strong for all that the day had to bring. So how do you carve out the time when you're maybe homeschooling your kids and trying to work from home, all the things that we already know? How do you carve out the time is that hopefully you make it your relaxed time. Our time together is our time where we wind down, not where sometimes people think oh, meet with my partner every day over issues and what are we going to talk about and who wants to show up for that? So, if my husband once said, if it's raining, nobody wants to go to the picnic. If it's an ugly staff meeting, none of the employees want to show up. If the couple's time together isn't light and productive and good faith efforts on both people's part to get along and work things through and enjoy each other, then you're not going to want to do it. But when you want to do it, when things feel good and go well, we want to repeat that. So you carve out the time by saying, when is our time? When is our time going to be? Is it going to be once a week? Is it going to be 3 times a week? Is it going to be every single day? And how are we going to get the kids out of it? How are we going to have it be just our time? So, which gets into a whole other issue, do your kids have bedtimes? And do you have a family bed? And I work with people that they have no time, because I'm not criticizing a family bed or anything like that, but if you have no time where you can set a boundary with your children, obviously babies, we're talking a whole different thing, but if you can't set boundaries with your kids like that, you're never going to be able to carve out that alone time.
That makes total sense. And that time should be free of other things like devices or television. I know Brian and I have been finding sometimes I'm an early bird, and so I like to get up early and have my coffee. And lately he's been really great. He's been coming down and joining me early in the morning. He'll make my coffee for me, and we've been having this nice quiet time, especially now that we have the tree up, right?
Twice.
Well, I think that's twice as good.
That's great. It's a great start.
Yeah, we're going to keep going, right? I appreciate it. So probably. So what are the 10 essentials to doing this?
Okay, so this goes along a little bit with, so I have these cards and people can find them on my website. And they're like little cheat sheets kind of things. And so, I don't know, I could share my screen if you want me to, or would that be too crowded?
Does it let you do that?
I thought I saw it on
It
screen.
should be on the list.
Well, that's okay. I'll just go through it. Okay, but anyways, I have these cards, and like what I usually start with couples with is, okay, so usually like 5 or 6 things bring people into therapy. And so of these 5 or 6 things, what are the things that you guys are struggling with? Because sometimes people are like, well, we're not good on parenting, we're not on the same page, but we're really good when it comes to finances, or we're not good at it's sometimes couples are like, I go through the list and they're like, we've got them all, we're struggling with all of them. And other times I go through the list and there's some real strengths. So so on this list, this is the qualities for intimacy. And as a number 1, I've got be their touchstone. Like, connect in a meaningful way every day, in a way that you're smiling, laughing, having fun. Not just if you have that already set up, then if you can deal with the good stuff, you can deal with the hard stuff. If you can't even enjoy each other and have fun with each other, which is the case that a lot of couples end up finding themselves in, is that the tensions are so high for whatever reason, that they can't enjoy each other. So be their touchstone. Like, I want to know that my partner is going to be there, that if I want to talk to them, they're going to be available to me, that I'm going to touch that stone every day in a meaningful way, at least 5-10 minutes a day. That's
And
number 1.
how many? You said at least once in a meaningful way. But what is optimal? Like, what should? Because I feel like we've heard that during our birthing class. Remember when Lee was talking about it's like 5 to 10 times you really are, or maybe that's the gratitudes, giving compliments to each other so many times.
So how many times do you want to touch base with your person in the day? I think it depends. Yeah, I think it depends on, your occupations. And do you have an occupation where like you can like I can text my husband in between clients, and is he in a job where he can receive a text? Maybe not, and maybe you don't need that. This is, there's so many things to connect or not connect on, like to be on the same page about or not, because some women and some men are like, I'm going to text them all day long. And some men are like, she texts me all day long. And it's so frustrating. And so you have to kind of be able to read each other's pulse on that and say, how much is too much? Like, I can't be taken away from I certainly cannot be texting socially or personally between every client. There wouldn't be the energy or the time for that. But so it's kind of up to the couple, but you have to kind of know each other, be able to read each other or ask each other, am I trying to connect with you too much in the day? Am I annoying you? Like, is it not enough? Is it like we go off in the morning and you forget that I even exist? So it's a field that the couple needs to work out how they're going to do that dance.
So step 1, connect in at least one meaningful time or connection every day.
Yeah, maybe it's when you wake up in the morning and you're still in bed together and you just, are in each other's arms for 3 minutes or 4 minutes. That might be it. But it's just that idea that says, like, you're special to me, you're important to me, and I don't have any relationship like this with anybody else. You're my one.
Awesome. All right. So what's number 2?
Number 2 is listen. These are in no particular order, by the way. But number 2, I have listed as listen. So it's resist trying to formulate and express your reply while the other person is talking. Couples do this all the time. When I try to get to
definitely guilty of this. Definitely.
When I try to do this reflective listening. Yeah. So if you have to, like, if your mouth is going like this, you may think you can multitask and hear really well, but don't do it, because you're gonna make the person feel they're not listening. You're not listening to them.
Right. And you're not actually catching anything, the full impact of what you're supposed to be listening to if you're doing that. I definitely I gotta work on that.
And it might even be over positive things, like you're just so excited about like the trip to Disney or something. And it's like, just, okay, one person talks at a time. It's so funny. I had, at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was doing telehealth sessions, I had some glitching with some systems that I was using. I mean, using, for the most of the time, I've been using a fully HIPAA compliant platform with Civil Practice. But for a while there, I was having to piece it together with other platforms. And I think it was Google Duo, might have been a different one, but one of them was set up so that two people couldn't talk at the same time. Only one screen, whoever the active talker was, somehow the system knew that, and everybody else was muted, like just even temporarily if it was going back and forth. And so the couples that I was seeing, like if they were on their own phones and we were all like, we all had a window and they were all talking over each other, arguing and stuff. I'm like, sorry, I can't hear you. I can only hear one person at a time. That's all the thing is letting me do. And so it was kind of funny to see how couples were like, they didn't care. They would just keep talking anyway, even though I couldn't hear them. And their spouse couldn't hear them either because only one person could be heard. So yeah, it's really, really important to not talk over people.
Absolutely. All right, number 3.
Number 3, we've got forgive. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess things up. We're going to hurt each other. Lots of things are going to go down that aren't going to feel right. And we have to forgive. And so even if the person isn't asking for forgiveness, maybe they know they did something wrong, maybe they don't know they did something wrong, but whether they're asking for it or not, if you don't have a heart of forgiveness, it's going to be really hard to get through the years with this person and not feel like this is just too hard because there's too much conflict and it doesn't get resolved. I mean, you can't just forgive and like never work on anything. You have to work on stuff too, but there are plenty of times. Actually, there's a card here on how to manage conflicts, how to effectively manage conflicts. It's just a one sheet. It's a half-page sheet. And the first note on that sheet is, what does it exactly say? It says, not all conflicts, not everything needs to be addressed. You can have an issue with each other and decide for yourself, that's not big enough to be an issue for me. Like I might be really upset about it, but this is not going to help to have to hash this out. We have other fish to fry kind of thing. And so we've got to just practice forgiving. Like, do you ever need forgiveness and you didn't ask for it and they forgave you anyway? And you're like, oh, well, that
all the time. Seriously, yeah. I had an epiphany moment, and I knew I was totally wrong. And I had gotten in the car and I was getting ready to leave. And he just came and knocked at my window and gave me a look. Remember that?
Yeah.
You were just like, and I was like, I just realized how much I loved him because I realized in that moment looking through the window and I started to kind of laugh and I was like, oh my gosh, I love him so much because he just knows and he knows that I know I'm wrong and he's just going to let it go.
And she was leaving for work, not because she was mad.
Yeah.
Storming off.
But it was, I was going to go off in a bad mood but he didn't call me out. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He realized I knew I was wrong. And I knew he was like, I forgive you. I love you. And come on, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a really good moment. I felt it was a really good moment.
Yeah. It just takes the energy, the negative energy just right out of it.
Oh my God. You're really good at that. He's really good at diffusing like situations or changing it up. Yeah, you know, that's a really.
I have to do it all day long at work.
What do you do for work?
Black and white stripes on it.
He works at a grocery store. He's one of the managers.
Okay.
So he deals a lot with
customer service and the customer's always right. Good idea. Yeah. Yeah, what do they say? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be married? Like, you don't always have to be, you don't always have to get your way. So having a forgiving heart is just really important.
Aw. All right. What about number 4?
For number 4, I've got honesty and trust. So if you don't have that, that's your foundation. And if you cannot trust each other, and if you cannot or you can't trust the other person, don't feel like they're being completely honest with you. The kids get tangled up in that. Other people get tangled up in that. You feel like, how can you really express yourself and have that deeper relationship if you feel like the person is maybe not being honest with you? And so whether it's over uh, what's in all those Amazon boxes that are on the step, or who's doing what with the kids, and whether we're letting the kids do this or that, or you don't need to tell your mom this, you don't need to tell your dad that. You can't have that. You can't have any lack of trust and honesty. Just like drives a wedge right in between. And then, like, say it's with the kids, then you've got a parent aligned with a child over something that the other parent doesn't know, even if it seems like it's very benign, like, mom, let me have candy after I brush my teeth or something, and don't tell dad. Or even if it seems like not much of anything, you have to fight against that, because it will erode a lot of important things.
And that's really a foundational, like that's a critical one, really.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. And people grow up in all sorts of families, and kids grow up in families a lot of times, like we adults were kids who grew up in families a lot of times where there wasn't honesty and trust. And then we bring that into our marriage. Like, I don't want to say anything because they might get mad, so I'm just gonna sugarcoat it a little bit. Or white lies. Okay, so I mean, if it's an issue in your relationship, I think you got to talk about it and talk about how important it is to you to be totally transparent and truthful to each other. And this is, because of the title of this parent podcast about intimacy, people are maybe thinking they're getting like a real racy kind of like 10 tips for racy hot sex or something.
And that's another episode, everybody, okay?
Well, you see on number 10, we get on number 9 and number 10, we get into that kind of stuff. So we better not waste too much time on this stuff.
No, I know, right?
This stuff is foundational.
So does honesty, though, apply across the board to all conversations? Like, you have to be able to be upfront and honest about your feelings, not just when it comes to the kids, but everything, the interactions you have, or just having an honest conversation. And it doesn't mean like it has to be an argument or people have to get on the defensive sometimes. If you can promote that honest conversation, even if you might differ or it might be a hard topic, you can work through those things where you...
Yeah. If you can't work through the hard topics, like even before kids, or then when you have little kids, they're going to follow you through your whole marriage, but your whole child raising ages. And so, if there are things that are going to be hot topics or too difficult to touch and you're going to want to skirt around them, that's not a very good prognosis for when your kids become teenagers. And then, it just, over the years, it just gets harder and harder.
Think of it like practice for when you have to deal with it with the kid.
Yeah, there's always going to be stuff that you're going to have to figure out. Look at the whole issue with the COVID, and should we be going here? Should we be going there? Did the kids go over to their friend's house? Should we not tell anybody? There's just, it's everywhere. You have to be truthful everywhere.
Absolutely. All right, number 5. We're working our way to number 9 and 10.
Yeah. So, but these first 8 things,
they're important.
Yeah, these are the foundations, because if you don't have this sense of security with each other, and openness and truthfulness and forgiveness and being able to listen to each other, if you don't have those things, you tend to behave in the bedroom like you behave in the kitchen. So
that's a good analogy.
you know, if you're not open, you know, if you don't have this stuff all worked out, how are you going to be in the bedroom saying like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing that, or I don't like that, or I like that, I want to do that. How are you going to feel comfortable to fully express yourself in that deeply intimate, physical, and passionate way if you can't do it in the kitchen over, you know, what the kids' schedule is like today? Okay, so number, where are we? Number 5?
Yes, number 5.
Okay, so make your partner your number one, which is kind of in line with the whole touchstone piece. But putting each other first. So a good example here is, let's say grandma's going to pay for ballet for little Susie. And do you set that all up with grandma, with your mother, or do you say, I'm so appreciative of that offer. Let me go home and talk to my husband. I mean, let me talk to whatever his name is, you know, to the mother-in-law. Let's talk about it, because maybe it's not my husband's vision for our 2-year-old or 3-year-old to start ballet. Maybe it's not their vision, even though you want to pay for it, and it's not going to be any skin off our back, or private school or public school, or, you know, whatever the issue is. Make it that kind of like, you know, when you get your positive pregnancy test, who is the first person that you call? Do you do it with your husband, or do you do it on your own, and then you're going to surprise him, but you're so excited about it, like you called and told your best friend first? So the number one, making your person the number one is really important. You want to know that you hold that number one place in your partner's life.
That's one that my parents, I think of an example for my parents, because they've really shown me that example growing up, is when we would, you know, kids like try to play one parent or go to their favorite parent over another if they want something and they want the yes answer, right? So my best friend, when we were little, we'd always try to go to my dad first if we wanted to have a sleepover last minute, or if we wanted something. And my parents were really, really good about it, because they always would say, I got to talk to your mother, or I got to talk to your father. And no matter what, and they've told me this as I've gotten older, they said, no matter what, we disagreed. There were times we disagreed.
Yep.
But we never let you know it. It was, we came first, and we were going to have that conversation, and then we were going to stand united as one unit, putting each other first. And that's been a really important lesson for me. And now reflecting upon it, like looking back, I understand. As a kid, I didn't, you know, always understand that. But it's that's what's important. You have to put each other first, and their opinion, and you need to talk to them first and move forward. It's something as simple as that, or as major as something else.
Yeah, the kids need to hear that too. Like, I'm going to talk with your dad about that. I'm going to talk with your mom about that. They need to hear that, because I can see as a therapist, you can probably see it just in life in general, that the effects of kids who have parents who don't agree. It's very hard on children. It gives them a place of power that they never should have, because now all of a sudden they have the power to decide, who should I go to? Who am I gonna, you know, side with or love more? You know, it gives them way too much power that they can't handle.
And I know we're not talking about, we're kind of really relating this to couples and relationships, and but that tip really goes along with, even if you're co-parenting, you really have to be still, I mean, you don't put them first as your partner, but as your co-parenting partner, you have to come together as a unit, because that is, like you said, critical for children, because they can do a lot of damage to children as they're growing up for that.
Right. I mean, even friends can take that. Friends, parents can take that number one spot in a person's life. And, you know, that's great if you have a very, very best friend and you do your nails together and you do everything together. But if you start to lose track of who you're married to, and they start feeling slighted, or like they're getting your scraps, like your leftovers, that's not going to work out.
Absolutely not. Yeah, agree. All right, number 6.
Number 6, keep track of your emotions. Keeping your emotions in check leads to the other person feeling safe and open. So if you have, no matter if they're high or low emotions or angry or whatever emotions, we are responsible for keeping track of our emotions and not burdening the rest of our family or a partner with them. I mean, obviously, hopefully they're there to support us through our emotions, but especially anger can be really toxic in a marriage. Um, Depression can be really hard because it's hard to get away from. It's hard to feel like you can fix it. So we have to be responsible for our emotions.
What's a good way to, like, when we talk about anger? So let's say you have a really hard day and you come home and you have a lot of that frustration, and too often sometimes we take it out on the people closest to us. And so what's a good way to kind of work around that, so when you walk into your house you can somehow let your spouse know without it coming out? I know it should be as simple as saying, I had a bad day and I'm really angry, and just stay away. But is there another way or a tip or a trick we can try that kind of diffuses that situation right off the bat? Maybe like a code word. I don't know. Maybe something you set up. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really a pretty important self-responsibility thing. So the first things I would say would be, like, if you're coming off a bad day and coming into the house, find a way to regroup on your drive home, and find a way to, like, breathe before you come in the door. And parenting and marriage is, like, kind of selfless in a lot of ways, and sometimes you just have to tell yourself, like, you have to just talk yourself down and say, I'm trigger happy today, and I maybe have to just, like, breathe and walk through the door and not open my mouth. And yeah, I don't know, a code word, if a code word would work for the two of you. Or if anger is a regular thing, then this is in your few minute time a day get together. You're gonna say, I'm struggling. I'm not happy at work these days, and when I come back, well, for example, Mondays I work. Mondays I have a 12-hour day, and I see 11 clients in 12 hours. So I'm talking all day.
That's a long day.
I'm done talking. By the time I get home, I'm like, so we have it kind of worked out. Like, my family knows. Mom's not the one to, my husband knows, like, I'm not going to be in my best social self on Monday nights because I just don't have it to give. So, it's just a matter of, like, knowing each other and that good faith effort to be like, I'm not going to let this happen. I have to, if I'm angry, I got to keep my mouth closed, or I got to say, I've got to take some time to myself.
And see, all of these, I'm starting to see they're all really connected, because keeping your emotions in check also involves being honest and having a conversation with each other and knowing one another, and putting each other first to control those emotions. So you're putting your partner first and your family first. So this is good. What's number 7?
7, seek to understand their feelings. So a lot of times, if we don't agree with somebody, the way somebody's feeling, you may not agree with their feelings, but you can't erase their feelings. So if you're in a conflict or there's a problem, or you're trying to work through something, you got to listen to their feelings. Try to understand where they're coming from. You may not agree, but you may be able to understand. A lot of times, a lot of people are familiar with the I statements and the reflective listening. So I say, I'm feeling blah, 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 blah. And then the other person says, if I heard you correctly, you're feeling blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you got it right, or no, you didn't get it right. And then you do the correction. It's a Harville Hendricks thing. Look up Harville Hendricks. So a lot of therapists are known for it, but he's probably the best known for it. But a lot of times people hesitate to say, okay, if I heard you right, you're saying you felt angry when this, and this. And they won't say it because they don't agree you should have felt angry. It's like, we're not talking about how I should have felt or how you think I should have felt. We're just talking about how I feel. Do you know how I say I'm feeling? And if you say it, just saying it back doesn't make it true necessarily. Maybe they're way off. Maybe they're wrong. but there's no harm, and it's a helpful thing to say, I see you're feeling very frustrated. Not, you're not right for feeling frustrated. So you got to try to put yourself aside and just understand they have feelings. You don't have to agree, but you have to honor their feelings.
You have to acknowledge that that's how they're feeling in that moment, and you can't. That's their truth. That is what they're living in that moment. Whether you think that should be happening, it doesn't matter. And I bet a lot of couples fall into that type of trap of trying to correct it as opposed to just saying, all right, that's, you're feeling that way, and okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like, Brian, you're the kind of guy who's good at this, right? It sounds like from what Amy said so far is that you've got to have some skills here.
We've known each other since we were 15, so.
Oh, that's nice. So, sometimes men think they have to fix everything and they have to come up with a solution. And so here's the takeaway is that all you have to do is say, oh, you seem like you're really frustrated. You just solved the problem. If it's so easy, like if that's the easiest way to solve it, then what's wrong with doing that?
Right.
Just
sometimes you don't want the problem solved. You just need to be heard and acknowledged of how that you're feeling this way. I've had a period of time where I felt overwhelmed because of the pandemic and things like that and stuff going on. And Brian just sat and he listened to me and just let me basically just get it all out. And I felt a lot better. And the fact that he didn't try to fix it, heard me, was helpful to me. I didn't realize it so much until the next morning that how powerful that was. But
it's a great strategy. It's a great strategy. And the way you can even keep it going and make it even better is after you think like she's already purged everything out that she has to say or feel, you say, what else? What else? And just let it be purged out. I mean, let her talk. Or let him talk.
Sitting here thinking we're going to be up till 3:00 in the morning.
No, because the more you do this, the more condensed it becomes and powerful it becomes and can be done with much less effort and much less time.
Because it becomes like a habit and second nature.
Yes, because if you know you're being heard, if you know you feel like you're being heard, you don't have to keep going on and on and on. It's when you don't feel like you're being heard that you have to keep going on and on.
Katie says there's always something else. Exactly. There really is. How can there not be?
Yeah.
I mean, especially, parents, there's so much going on every day, on and on and on. It's like you're just bottling it all up. So there's always something to
Yeah, and even if it's like, Brian, even if you're like a guilty party and you did something that really upset her, still, you talk to me about it. What else? And then you can defend yourself later, but let her say what she wants to say first, or vice versa. Same thing the other way.
Yeah, it's got to be a two-way street, right? Because if you want that same respect, you have to be willing to give it. Awesome. I like this. And I think it's important not to keep in mind when you're doing these things, don't take everything personally. Like you said, just let them be, have that honest conversation and let them be open. All right. What's number 8?
Number 8, care and compassion. Pay attention. Let the other person know you're paying attention. And like the things we've already been talking about, that shows you're paying attention, that you care for them, you're compassionate toward them. But you don't ever want to feel lonely when you're in a marriage. I work with a lot of couples. It's like somebody feels lonely or they both feel lonely sometimes. And you want to be able to connect with each other in a way that you don't feel lonely. You shouldn't feel lonely.
Do you think that, I know you and I have had conversations about technology before, especially about the generation of kids and what types of relationships. I know that we are both guilty of it sometimes. And we probably spend some of the time that we should be spending as our personal, like, priority time, that connection of meaningful time every day. Sometimes we both we just get on our phones. We plop down and it's like, okay. And we start playing on the phones. And so we're missing out on that meaningful connection time. I mean, we're near each other, but we're not present with each other.
Yeah.
And we're both, I know we call each other out all the time actually about it.
Yeah.
And, but do you find that as the rise of the digital age and technology, are you seeing that more and more with couples, that being a common problem?
Yeah, I'm still surprised. It happens all the time, but I'm still surprised when grown adults are in front of me in my office arguing about somebody being on their device too much. I'm like, I mean, I'm not criticizing or judging because I know it's easy to go down that road, but you have to recognize it and correct it right away. And I'm seeing people like these are like smart people. I have good clients, I have smart clients, they're professional people, they're good people. Not just professional people are good people, but you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm not seeing people who like just don't have a clue about life. My clients have a clue about life. And so it surprises me that they're sitting there even sometimes defending like, well, you were on yours, you were on yours, you were on, they're like bickering like kids with their parents, with each other. And I'm still surprised about it, but it's like, you've got to recognize that it's not about telling this, it's, you're doing it to be the one first to be like, I'm just not going to have my device here while we're in bed watching TV together or listening to music or whatever we're doing, starting to have sex or something. You don't want your device to get in the way.
Right. Are people that extreme that in the middle of having sex, they're going to be checking the text message when it beeps? I mean, I'm sure
some people have a very hard time ignoring that signal that goes off.
I mean, that could go into a whole nother conversation about how, screens and addiction and how it really truly is an addiction.
Yeah.
And it, again, this a little aside, but it makes me a little nervous for our kids that they're growing up with that completely. I mean, our generation, prior to really the big spring of the digital age, we had the first original computers, Carmen Sandiego, dial-up AOL and box phones. And so, but we still played outside. And I think as a result, a lot of us, we kind of still understand the balance of both. Whereas this next generation coming behind us, they don't know any different.
Yeah, they've never seen that.
And so I worry about, I don't know what you see in like younger relationships. Because we're apparently approaching middle age, so we're a little older. But I think about those young 20-year-old moms or dads, and that's got to be a big problem. And
yeah, it's definitely significant.
All right, so we are on to number 9.
Number 9, I've got.
And guess what? It's almost after 9, so it's appropriate now.
So number 9, I've got touch each other like you touch no one else. So this gets into this physical intimacy part, and I'm not saying, I'm talking about touch that's non-sexual too, but like when you're walking by your coworker at the coffee machine, you're not, dragging your hand across their back or their back ends. But so you better not be. You better not be. So you've got to have touch happening, regular touch happening, and it's got to be like you don't do it with anybody else. It's got to be special just for the two of you. You have to have. This is the part of this is the part of a marriage or committed relationship that you do with somebody that you don't do it with anybody else. You don't hug your mother like that. You don't hug your brother like that. You don't hug your kids like that. You don't, and it may be non-sexual even still, but there has to be touch, and there has to be special touch.
And touch is such a vital anyway important part of human communication and intimacy, but it's a nonverbal way of reassuring, just a hand sometimes, or like you said, a brush up or a stroke. It doesn't have to necessarily be
Right.
sexual, but something that's intimate to just you and your partner.
Yeah. And so like the way you just touched Brian, what I see a lot of times is like the man goes and touches the woman, just like you just touched him now. He probably didn't read that touch that you just did to him as you want to get it on with me, like right after this program. I don't know. Don't share anything that I don't want to hear. But
Oh,
but women tend to have there's the stereotypes involved that women tend to have the idea that like if he did it to you, if he just touched your hand like that,
that means you want to get into bed right away.
yeah. Yeah, and so you have to break that down. You have to be touching each other enough and having enough of an understanding that it's like, this isn't a pressure thing. This isn't a like signal. It may be, but it may not. It doesn't have to be every time. But touch is really important. It's really important for your kids to see you touching each other. It's really important for your kids to see you dancing around the kitchen. It's really important for your kids to see you hugging and kissing each other goodbye. It's so important.
Right, because it's setting an example for them for a healthy intimacy and a healthy relationship between your parents.
Yeah. And my parents are more than friends. Like my parents have something with each other that they don't have with anybody else.
Right.
And they love each, like sometimes what's that?
They love each other.
Yeah.
I remember, I remember when Ethan was little, as Brian's his stepdad, he, at first, for a number of years, remember he used to get in between us whenever we would, just give each other a hug or a kiss and
trying to
separate us. And he was little, he was the man in my life, even though Brian's been in his life since he was born. But they do see that. And so it's good that they see us. We do, embrace in the kitchen or dance or give each other a kiss when we come home. And so they do see that type of thing.
When I was seeing kids a lot in therapy, I would often ask the question, how do your parents feel about each other? Well, they feel okay they're fine with each other. All age kids too. And then I would say, do you think they love each other? And they'd be like, well, yeah, probably, I guess so. And then I would say, how do you know? They'd be like, well, I don't know. And you want them to be able to say, I know because they touch, they hold hands, they watch movies together, they talk to each other like they're friendly. Like these are the examples we're giving to our kids. And unfortunately, we're living in a culture right now, in a period right now, where they're saying the divorce rate is going down. It's because people aren't getting married. And it's because they have this idea about it, like you wouldn't possibly stay with the same person for your whole adult life. We're not meant like that. We're like, I was in the salon one time and I was listening to this other side conversation that these other people were having about how, not even animals stay with the same person. I mean, they have all these reasons to justify like why I shouldn't get married and why I should play with it. So yeah, it's really important to have that demonstration.
That model, yeah, because that's who they're learning from and what they're seeing at home, and that's what they're going to think a relationship, whatever you're modeling at home. And if you're not touching, if you're not communicating, your child will potentially grow up and get into a relationship, or maybe not at all, but they could get into a relationship where they're not talking, they're not intimate with their partner, they don't model that. And it becomes an unhealthy relationship that doesn't survive. The only way for marriages to survive is to, learn by that example. Like, okay, yeah, mom and dad, they did love each other and they worked through everything and put each other first. And that's what you want your kids to then take to the next generation, to raise your grandkids or your great grandkids.
The family unit.
We need more love anyway. Why isn't everybody doing that? All right. Number 10, Tracy.
So number 10 is love each other passionately. I mean, seriously, like if you're not loving each other passionately, you've been reduced to just either business partners or friends. And when you're loving each other passionately, you're much less likely to be bickering with each other like brothers and sisters. And when you're, if you're getting in bed to do the wild thing with this person later, why are you going to be bickering with them if they don't go together?
Right.
So you have to keep in mind, like, this is a person that I do these really special, important things with. They're not a person I want to be bickering with and arguing with and power struggling with. So yeah, the passion makes the marriage a marriage. You can have a celibate marriage if two people want a celibate marriage, but otherwise you can't. It's not going to work. It's in what I work a lot with is desire discrepancy, which is really common, incredibly common. That one person,
what is desire discrepancy?
one person wants it more than the other. One person maybe doesn't want it at all. The other person wants it all the time, and they're so far apart on the spectrum of desire that they're both frustrated all the time. And that kind of frustration, that kind of tension doesn't work out. It's like having a sickness that, like, you just keep feeling sicker and sicker and sicker. And then it's just, you got to get a cure somewhere. You have to be cured from that. So there's, not to get off topic here, but there's a 4-phase intimacy process that I do with people, and that's on my website too.
Let me pull that back up so everybody sees it here. It's TracyLamperti.com.
And so that starts with the emotion, like phase 1 is the emotional intimacy. Phase 2, and it steps it up each time to the swinging from the chandeliers in stage 4, or the fun in the bedroom in stage 4. But there's a whole process. And so people who are a lot of times couples don't have the language to be able to have these conversations. They're not comfortable talking about intimacy. They're not comfortable expressing themselves, saying what they want. Think of a person at a restaurant who's just been brought there. What's your favorite dessert?
I don't know. That's a good
Okay, mine's creme brulee. So they bring creme brulee to my table.
Creme brulee is good. That's one of your favorites too. No, the pudding. What's the pudding? Yes, pudding. What is it called?
There's
grape nut pudding.
Okay, so the person who receives it spoons their spoon into it, takes a bite, and says, "This is so good." That person is likely to be the one who can express themselves in the bedroom and say, "That feels so good. I like that. Do that again." So there's a big spectrum on that too, is that a lot of people aren't expressive like that. They're self-conscious. They're worried about expressing themselves, or they're just not. They don't have practice. They haven't been doing it. So it doesn't feel natural or comfortable. And, so there's a lot of ways that you can bring the desire discrepancy issue together. And a lot of times couples need help with that, either self-help from resources they pull off the web, or with a therapist who's qualified and trained to do that kind of work. Because it's a problem. It's one of the top problems in couples.
What do you think the percentage of couples that affects?
You can actually get some of this information online. I don't know where the surveys exactly come from, but I don't know. I mean, I see a lot of couples, and
so you see it a lot, though.
I see it a lot.
That you're seeing it a lot.
A lot.
For a lot of different reasons, whether it's, like you said, self-confidence with being comfortable with themselves. Yep. I'm sure that can often be an issue, either maybe self-body image or
trauma
or comfortability.
Fatigue.
Yeah. Children.
children, yeah,
Children cause a lot of
distractions,
fatigue.
health issues, menopause, yeah, pregnancy,
Diet, I mean, I'm sure everything can kind of drive down or boost up different libidos.
right.
And so I'm sure this goes back to some of our tips earlier. You have to have an honest conversation as a couple to deal with that and say, hey, this is where we're at. I don't want to be here. How do we work together to move forward?
Yeah, you got to talk about it all the time. Even if it's good, you still got to talk about it because you can make it even better. And so what I see is that it's a big problem in a lot of marriages and it causes a lot of trouble. And in the couples that come in that are really in a very hard place, but their sex life is intact, they're the couples that are going to thrive. They're the couples who are going to get through stuff. That's my experience. So if I go through the list of things that brings couples into therapy and they hit the bell on every single one except for that one, I know that we have a great prognosis.
Because you can work towards that through everything else.
Yeah. It's the thing about marriage that makes it a marriage.
So that's an important thing, everybody. Number 10. And if you are having difficulty with that, it's, either reach out for help. You can contact Tracy. There's resources on the web or contact a therapist, but start by having an honest conversation because
Definitely. Yeah, I have a lot of resources on my website about it.
Absolutely. And I have it right here, tracylamperti.com. Tracy, as we wrap up here, we got like about 2 minutes and we're going to sign off. Do you want to have the last word? Thank you so much for joining us again. I love having you on as a guest, and we'll have you on again. Brian, did you have any questions for her or anything to share at the end?
I think we covered all 10 of them.
Sounds like you're doing
a meaningful time tonight is what we're going to do. We're going to put aside time for us, right? We're going to put those kids to bed.
Yeah. Kids and bedtime's really important.
Very
yeah.
important.
I mean, I guess the last word would be like, a lot of times what I see is like in terms of the passion and the physical intimacy or even the connecting on a regular basis is that it's almost like one or both of the people in the couple are like, okay, the dishes have to be done, the kids have to be quiet and settled or maybe even sleeping, the stars have to line up in a certain way, the moon has to be in a certain retrograde or whatever, and then I'll be intimate with you. And I have to not be tired. Like there's all these conditions. And it's like we can never attain that. So you're gonna have to lighten up a little bit and stop making excuses for connecting with each other.
Absolutely.
Or, sometimes couples will be like, well, what about a babysitter in the pandemic and all of that? You can have some really exciting dates at your house with your kids sleeping in their beds.
You get up early, very early in the morning.
Early.
Kids like to sleep right through that 3-4 o'clock time. So thank you so much, Tracy, for coming on and sharing those 10 essential tips with us. And we'll reshare it on the blog and this week redirect them to the site so they can get those 10 tips again. It's always a pleasure having you. Please check out her website, tracylamperti.com. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you, Brian, for joining me for this. We had a great time, and I think we learned some stuff, and we'll put some tools to work. Coming up in the next 2 weeks, we've got David McLean is back to do holiday cocktails and mocktails next week. And the week after, we're going to have our friends back from Navigating ADHD, and we're going to specifically talk about diet and exercise for children with ADHD and how to benefit them. I'm actually going to let Katie have the last word. She says, very informative and enlightening. Thank you both. Thanks for joining us, Katie. Thank you, everybody else who's joined us. And we'll see you all next time on the Parent Pod. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.